Balls Deep.
Welcome to Balls Deep, a humorous yet informative medical show with a mission of optimizing your performance in the bedroom, the bathroom, and the boardroom. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Pizzona, a board-certified urologist and CEO of Pizzona MD. We hope you enjoy. Now, let's jump right in. Stream team, welcome to another episode of Balls Deep. Dr. Joe Pizzona here for part 2 of strength training. Bringing back Jeremy. Jeremy, welcome to the show again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, for those of you who didn't catch the first episode with Jeremy Hughes, owner of Paragon Strength and Fitness, recommend you watch that. Got a great background as to Jeremy's beautiful story into fitness. His struggles, we all have struggles, and it's important you understand that you're not alone. It's, I think, very easy to look at people who are quote in shape and go, you were born that way, right, Jeremy? It's all genetics, but
absolutely,
it's we all have struggles and stories, and it's a journey, and we all have to start somewhere. And we did a great deep dive into why should people care about strength training? The fact that you're going to cut down chronic disease. The fact that you're going to improve your bone health, the fact that you're just going to be a stronger person and able to better deal with all the stressors we're all feeling as busy professionals and parents and spouses.
Sure.
So, I thought for this episode, why don't we kind of dive into some actionable tips? Let's help the audience out here. I'm sure a lot of them are like, all right, yeah, I know I need to work out. I already lift. What do you know that I don't know? So does that sound like a good plan here?
Absolutely. This is probably going to be my favorite one. I love listening to stuff. I love research. I love all the components of everything. But at the end of the day, the things that have always made the most impact on my life are things I've listened to, and they've given me information that I can just walk away in 5 minutes. I can start to apply things that's going to make a difference in my life. So yeah, absolutely. Let's get started on this.
Balls deep.
All right, so let's get real tactical here, Jeremy. So let's go over the top 5 mistakes that you see people making in the gym or when they first start working out with you. And I look at some of these, I'm like, yeah, I was doing that wrong. and you beat
There's
me.
A couple on there, right?
There's a couple. I'm trying to think. I'm like, shit, Jeremy, I think you came up with this list looking at what you did with me here. But I'm willing to improve and say I'm wrong. And that's why I started working out with you is, I'm someone who worked out for, the past 20 plus years, but I was tired of just those plateaus. And it was seeing my wife work with a trainer and going, I expect people to come to me as an expert. Why am I DIYing this? So where do you want to start? What's one of the big mistakes here you see people making?
We'll kind of piggyback off our last session. It's not having a plan. So I see people that come, they just basically want to get stronger. They want to put on more muscle, and there's not much beyond that. So I think a lot of people, when they start out, they go into the gym and they're going to repeat something that they got off an influencer that here's the workout that's going to change your life. Lose 30 pounds by doing this workout.
Yeah, I've done that.
And absolutely. And the truth is everything works, but everything stops working. Everything is a good tool, but is it the correct tool at the correct time based on your environment, based on where you're at in life? So I think you have to have a plan, and you got to have a really precise goal. And then when you have that long-term goal, you can reverse engineer and put things in place to achieve that goal. You need an assessment. So when you're starting out, if you come to me and you say, I want to get big and strong, put on a bunch of muscle. Hey, I want to work on my legs. Not that you wanted to work on your legs, but some guys, they want to work on their legs.
Yeah.
It's build some legs and match their upper body,
Right.
So if a lot of trainers, they would throw them on a barbell squat. And a barbell squat for most people, if they haven't been doing something, is probably the worst use of a squat that you could possibly start with. So that's where we put them through a test. We see what their mobility is. We see what their unilateral strength is. We see what that structural balance that we talked about, left to right, front to back, top to bottom. What are those ratios? Because if something's off, if there's a glaring weakness, and we just promote total body strength, then your chain is only as strong as that weakest link. And if the mobility and you have like an area we talked about that's not where it should be, you're going to get injured along the way. So I think that a lot of people, when they start training, They go, maybe they're in their 40s now, like I am, 42. You know, they go back when there's been an episode, a lack of time that they haven't worked out, and they go back to doing what they did in their 20s.
Yep.
And they go gung ho. I'm going to come in. I'm going to train really hard, and I'm going to be sore for a week. And that's probably the worst thing you could do. Is like it's always getting the most out of the least. So we take that assessment, we take the goal, and then we put a plan in place, and then we test. We test ever so often to make sure we're moving towards that goal.
This was probably my biggest Achilles heel, to be honest, because what I would typically do, I'm sure like most people, is you just go to the gym and you're like, what do I feel like doing today? Right? Or what did I do last week? And then maybe you got some people who maybe are a little bit more detail oriented and they've got like their notebook and they keep track. But like you said, if you don't have someone who's doing that assessment to look for your weaknesses, you could be setting yourself up for an injury, which a period of rest and not working out is one of the worst things we can do for our health because of the atrophy and how far you decline and then how hard you got to work just to get back there, right?
Yeah.
And then you brought up another idea of progression from our last episode, right? How do you know you're progressing? It's very easy when you're just by yourself to go, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. But if you're not improving the volume you're lifting, the reps, and changing it up and having an expert as that external sort of look at you as to how you're doing things, you're not going to head to where you want to anyway. So yes, you're in the gym, you're moving your body, but it's not as effective as it could be.
Yeah, I think there is merit to tracking something. I'm not saying you got to track every single exercise, but maybe you track the first 2 exercises because that's when you're going to have a true test to be able to repeat that over and over and over. When you get later in the workout, sometimes depending on if it's a different type of workout, you can't compare it. It's not apples to apples. So I would say making sure that you collect some data because without data, you're just lost. You have no real way of saying what's working and what's not. But tracking maybe 1 or 2 exercises in the beginning and just making sure every time that you come to do that exercise, the next workout, that you're moving up the weight just slightly. A lot of people, they jump up weight 10, 15, 20 pounds. It could be something as 1 pound. Mm-hmm. It could be 2.5 pounds. We have little plates in our gym that are half a pound each. So we can go up at 1 pound, every time we come in. And it's those short wins that leads to those long-term gains with that. Or is it somebody, maybe you don't have more weights. Maybe you're at home and you've got a couple of dumbbells. Maybe it's more body weight type things. Well, maybe you start to work on tempo. So maybe when I'm doing a split squat or I'm doing a chest press or something like that, or a push up if I don't have any weights, well, maybe I'm holding myself more in the hold and I'm making it. I'm taking the momentum out of the lift, so then it makes that exercise even more difficult. So there's ways with the rest, cutting down on the rest. Maybe I start with 60 seconds rest in between sets. And then the next time I come back, I only rest 50 seconds. Maybe I do more. I do 3 sets of something versus 2. So it doesn't matter what it is. It just matters that something's changing. And I think people, they stay in something too long too. We try to change our workouts at Paragon about every 3 to 4 weeks for a client. If somebody's more of a beginner, it's more important to learn technique, and it's more of a skill set you're teaching. That's where the strength initially comes from, the gains and stuff. So we may go a little bit longer phases with the beginner. But once you've been doing it, once you're locked in you've been working out consistently for 6 months to a year, I think there's merit to changing something every 3 to 4 weeks and working on something different. So it's assessing, hey, we wanted to get muscular endurance, so maybe we did a little bit higher reps on our workout. Well, we've improved that. So now what's holding us back? Well, we need more muscle because we want to get stronger, but we don't have the muscle mass to be able to do that yet. Okay, we're going to create a plan for 4 weeks, build more muscle. Okay, at the end of that, where do we go next? So something should always be changing. It's the people that just come in and do the same thing over and over and over. I'm going to hit that chest press. They got the circles at the gyms for a reason. People go in, and unfortunately, if you work out in those circles, your results are kind of just going to go in a circle as well. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a huge mistake I was making. I'd be doing the same workout for months at a time because I was just so, I don't think I had the guidance. I don't think I knew where to go, or honestly, just the idea of having to think and plan, like I'm running a business, I've got my kids. Like the last thing I want to do is spend time building out some workout plan when, if we're honest, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Sure.
So, I think this is probably the number one thing you get by working out with a trainer is that plan. That's someone who can take their expertise that you don't have and then take the cognitive burden off of you so you don't have to think about it. I love that I just show up. I'm like, all right, Jeremy, how you kicking my ass this week? Right.
And I think the important factor of that is not just show up and have somebody be, overseeing all that. I think things with trainers, there's a lot of great trainers out there. It's like anything. There's great ones,
Sure.
and there's some that aren't quite there. And I think a lot of trainers, unfortunately, they train every client the way that they train themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's a young 20-year-old or it's a mid 20-year-old and they're athletic, and this workout worked for me, so I'm going to put Miss Jane through this workout who's 55 and hadn't worked out in 20 years. So
right.
I think it's the ability to understand where a client is. I think it's education that you need that sets the difference there. And the way we do things at Paragon is I believe everybody needs as many different modalities of working out as possible, because I think if people always do free weights, they lock themselves into overuse injuries of doing the same thing over and over and over. Puts a lot of stress on the joints. I think some people that do machines, well, then they don't necessarily get the stability and balance if they're always training with machines. And then I think there's merit to free weight, free weight stuff and TRX. And so the programs we try to provide, they provide everything, because I think the more you subject the body to that stress that you subject the body to in different areas, the more resilient of a creature you're going to have, kind of like we talked about in the first.
Yeah, love it. So first mistake, not having a plan, not tracking, not being consistent. What else you got, Jeremy? What else is a big mistake you say?
I think people, when they go to the gym, they focus on what they're comfortable on. So we got mirror muscles, for the guys, it's above the waist, and they don't ever train legs properly or in balance with their body. And I think a lot of people go to the gym because they don't feel comfortable doing free weights. So that's why they go to that machine thing. So I think we all understand that things that are tough for us are probably the things we should be doing more often, because that's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck, and it's going to move us forward with that. And then I think same thing is you need to find somebody that can help you personalize things. The personalization is what makes the difference. It's just because you see somebody in shape that's promoting a certain workout doesn't mean it's going to work for you at all. So most times you're at a completely different journey in your life from where that person is. Doesn't mean it can't work for you later on down the road.
Sure.
But you need to understand proper mechanics, and you need to get your body to move correctly before you really start pushing it. And with that being said, I think a lot of people, they train too hard out of the gate. I think if you ease the body into something, you don't put too much stress on it, the body will adapt positively, versus coming in, going gung-ho for 2 weeks, being so sore, injuring yourself, getting tendonitis in a month, and people having to take time off. So I think it's easing into that. And if you start where you feel comfortable, you're challenging yourself a little bit, but not too much. And then the body has time to adapt to that. Your tendons and ligaments, they don't have much blood supply, so a lot of people will get really strong fast, or if they've had a layoff and they come back, their muscular strength will improve very quickly, but the tendon and the ligament strength isn't there yet. So that's why we give most people about a 4 to 8 week structural balance phase to make sure their body's ready for the rigors that we're going to put them through, which ultimately where the performance will really come, and they'll see the results.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of great stuff there, Jeremy. So what I heard first is this concept of people tend to do what's comfortable. And that, as we talked about in that last episode, it's in that stress, that discomfort where we get change. But yet if we don't have that trainer working with us, it's human nature to just keep going on the same machine and, putting a lap in that same circle that you and your bros at the gym all hit, right?
Right.
I think that's a great way to kind of head into sort of another thing you and I had talked about before we started, was talk a little bit about, the form of people. What do you notice in terms of form? I know that was certainly something I noticed. I thought I was pretty good with my form, and I think I'm pretty good with it, but you really nailed down with me certain aspects of it. And I think we've all seen guys at the gym who just go there and they're dropping weights all over the place and doing one of these things all the time and not doing full range of motion. So talk to me more about sort of form and what is good form versus poor form, and what do you notice people doing wrong?
Well, I think good forms are going to allow you to feel whatever muscle you're trying to work, you feel that muscle working when you're doing that movement. A lot of people, they focus on moving a weight from point A to point B. That's a powerlifter. Yes. That's all they care about. But unfortunately, that's what a lot of people do. And their weight will increase for a while. and then it plateaus, and they never see anything else develop beyond that because they weren't building the muscular strength and everything they needed to go along with that in the particular muscle, because all it was I'm just going up and down, up and down.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that we could really dive into this. I could speak on this forever, but
Right.
I think if in regards to things that are going to help us with health span, obviously the more muscle mass that we have, we've talked about how that's really going to help. So usually what I try to do is use a tempo that's slower in the eccentric or the lowering phase of something to make you really have good control of the muscle for you to feel that. And then a lot of times we'll do a pause in the deep range of motion, whatever the lift may be, to get your body used, kind of use that as corrective exercise to get in that range of motion we're not used to, and then hold it so the brain starts to give us more range of motion with that. So that's something we definitely use. But if you're not feeling a pump, you don't feel something happening in the muscle by the end of the set, you haven't picked an exercise that's good for you, because there's tons of exercises, but there's a lot of exercises that aren't great for everybody. So
Right.
it's maybe looking at your exercise prescription, things that allow you to feel like you're working the muscle, but your joints aren't hurting afterwards. But then definitely that tempo is slowing it down. And then total time under tension. So TUT is something we really focus on. If you want to build muscle, you really need to have a stress on a muscle for about 40 to 70 seconds when it comes to the total time under tension on that muscle. If you all of a sudden, when you're coming up on, let's say we're doing like a pull down, we pull it down, I'll use like a hold most of the time. So we learn to contract the muscles, start to work on that proper form and stuff, and pulling the shoulders back, getting our body used to being in that position, because most people are internally rotated. But even when you come up, we're never relaxing. We're always keeping the muscles tight, so we keep that tension on there. And if you always let your muscles, though, relax every single time that you do a rep, you're really not going to get the tension that you need, and you're not going to create the adaptations that you need as well as far as building muscle.
Yeah, I think those are the two biggest things I've learned from working out with you guys. Is I was going way too fast with the movements. And it's funny now when I go to my local gym for days that I'm not working out with you guys and you've developed a workout for me, I'm amazed at how fast people are going through their exercises. But like you said, it's not about maximizing movement from A to B. It's about building strength. Unless you are doing some competition, getting all this momentum into it. We see these guys do the rows where they're kind of leaning back, and you always tell me about slowing down, and then also that it's a focus of your brain almost. I mean, you're really concentrating.
It's a mind-muscle connection.
Yeah, I mean, you're really concentrating on that muscle, right? And that by doing so, you are getting more out of that workout. And I jokingly say, I've never been so sore lifting such little weight. But again, I'm not trying to win any competition. I want results, and it's made such a difference. And I haven't gotten hurt as a result.
The tempo will protect you. That's why with progressive people when we talk about adding weight, a lot of people, they do get injured because they go so fast that there's no stress on the muscle. It's on the joint. Yeah. So it's slowing things down and using a tempo. And how do you, if you go one speed one time and one speed the next, if we don't have a tempo that we're saying, okay, I'm going to go 4 seconds on the way down, one up, then if you want to raise the weight or you want to progress that, how do you know if you don't have anything to compare it to? So it's all about having data and being able to compare week to week to week. And you got to have some parameters in place to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, so number 2 I've got down, or we'll call number 3 here, is your form is just not great. So leading into number 4, which we've kind of touched on here, but let's dive a little deeper, that people are ignoring progressive overload. You talked earlier about people going out too hard, or people who are just not even adding in any weight and progressing. So we talked about the importance of adaptation. So walk us through, when you say progressive overload, what's the right way to do it, and how are people doing it incorrectly?
So the way at Paragon that we teach it is usually when we start something new, say it's the first week, we have our exercises picked out, we go to the gym, we start our workout. We want to make sure that we're getting full range of motion, first and foremost. We want to make sure we're adhering to the tempo that we've created to create the adaptation we want. But we're also undershooting it that first week. So it's about perfection of technique and form over anything as far as going to what people call failure. Usually then when we repeat that, we try to get closer to failure. So we won't hold back. We won't say, well, when we finish the set, we probably could have done 3 more. Well, then the next week we get to where maybe we only do 1 or 2 more that we could have had left in the tank. And then usually that 3rd or 4th week, especially if people are feeling comfortable and we've got them to where there's no injuries or anything like that, then that 3rd or 4th week, okay, let's go. It's time to get to work. Let's set some personal best. Let's see what you got. Don't hold back, and let's push it, because intensity is a thing. A lot of people will train with volume, so they'll do these longer workouts. Some people, they enjoy more intense workouts, shorter workouts, and they both can be very productive. But I think the one thing, once you have all the structural balance in place, there's no injuries, you've created a good nutrition plan, people feel good, you've created just somebody, a healthy individual. It's time to get to work, though, because if you're not going close to failure, and that's when your technique starts to break down, not when you cheat a few more reps and your form changes. If you're not pushing the intensity, the body, after you get through that initial beginner stage of maybe 3 months of starting to do weight training when you haven't, you're not going to see the changes that you're looking for. You have to push your body. You have to get into that painful zone of the lactic acid burning, and when you're doing leg extensions and your quads feel like they're going to explode. Like at some point you have to take your body there, and you have to just, that's what needs to be expected on most sets, especially if you have little time and you want to be optimal and efficient when you work out. So it's pushing yourself with that.
So it's almost like a Goldilocks phenomenon, right? You don't want to be too soft, but you also don't want to go out too hard. And that's another thing I've appreciated working out with you guys is, and I've even learned, is that self-control in the beginning when it's a new movement, and going, like yesterday we worked out with Jonathan, and we did a new sort of like a cardio, but it wasn't just going an elliptical. I mean, I was doing ball slams and pushing a sled and doing bear crawls.
Strongman conditioning.
Oh my God, it sucked. But I mean, I was huffing and puffing. And, at first he's like, all right, we're going to have a 4-minute rest. I'm like, I don't need that. By the last set, I'm like, thank God I have that 4-minute rest. And he's like, all right, well, we don't have to do all 6 sets today. We can maybe just do 4, and next week we'll do 5. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, because I'm 47. I didn't want to do something new that I hadn't done in a while. These were movements I haven't done in years, even though I've been working out consistently, because I didn't want to get hurt. And so you guys have taught me that that's okay, but then also there are those moments to push. And so it's not something you can just easily teach somebody as to when to go softer and when to go harder. I think that's the value of working with experts like yourself, is you guys know when to turn it up and when to start slow.
And we've got the data. So we've been tracking your whole journey. We know what prior, the months before, what weight you've used. So once you're starting out very general at first. You don't have any information, and all we're trying to do is just build a portfolio basically of the client, how they move, how they work, kind of like with you and your patients. But after you've done that for 3 to 6 months, it's not like you're just kind of guessing anymore. We've got a very good idea of what your capabilities are and how hard we can push you safely. And that's part of it. And like you said, with the volume, being able to increase that. I like how you said 4 minutes. He gave you a 4-minute rest and you're like, I don't need that. A lot of people, they mess up when it comes to conditioning, because muscle mass, VO2, most important things you can develop when it comes to health span. But a lot of people, they'll do these boot camp classes where they start and it's just, they're off to the races, and they just move the entire time. We give rest in between a lot of our cardio because we want you to be able to not perform best that first exercise. We want you to repeat over and over and over the performance side of things. We don't want your first set to be the best, and then everything else is just suffering. You're just trying to make it through the workout.
Just get through it.
Because that doesn't change the body. All it does is induce a lot of fatigue, and you can't recover from that. So it's not how hard you work out. It is, but the best plan is going to be one you can recover from, because there's a lot of people that they train really hard, they don't eat correctly, and they don't see any benefit because the recovery isn't there.
So it's interesting you bring that concept up of the recovery, because although in one breath I said I didn't want those 4 minutes, my results actually did improve. So to your point, where I was not only maintaining the intensity, I got stronger as I got warmed up and my form kicked in and the movements became more sort of intuitive. But if it weren't for that rest, I think what I would have done on my own, I would have just pushed myself. Let me get through this workout as quickly as possible.
Performance would have dropped everything after.
Absolutely. I'm busy. I just want to, I'm sure most of you are like, let me just get this workout over with. But truly your goal is to get the results and improve, it's the worst thing we can do, and that using that rest. So I love that you brought that up, because I think a lot of people do go to some of these boot camps. And listen, if the boot camp is the difference between you being on a couch and doing nothing, by all means do it. But if you're plateauing, if you're open to the idea, working with that trainer who knows when to rest you and pull back. It's funny, I've never worked out as intensely as well as I don't want to say easily as I have with you guys, but it's this sort of yin and yang. It's giving myself permission to pull back because my body does need that rest. But then when I go, I'm going hard.
You work harder by working smarter.
Absolutely. So, Jeremy, let's hit on one final one, and I think this probably one, especially for the guys out there who are working on their beach muscles.
I noticed those sleeves are a little tighter than what I see you at the gym in. I like that.
I got to compete with you today,
you're
man.
Sitting on the left side too there, so you got your good side. I like it. Smart man.
I mean, listen, you're bulging out of your shirt. I'm like, I'm finding the tightest damn T-shirt I can find today. I'm not trying to impress my wife. I'm trying to impress you. But let's talk about this idea of sort of the mirror muscles, the vanity, the beach muscles that we all see these guys who are completely top heavy with little skinny legs versus being functionally strong. Walk us through, the difference, why that's important, and why you gotta be careful when you're designing your workout to not just go for the vanity aspect, although it's okay. We all want to look good, but.
So I think it comes down to, once again, your goal. And if you're someone who has poor metabolic flexibility, you have insulin resistance, then usually it will go two ways. It depends on the ability of the client with their nutrition, how they're going to be able to set that up. But if somebody's dealing with insulin resistance, metabolic inflexibility, high stress levels, the worst thing I can do is drive them into the ground. Try to and that's what a lot of trainers do. They think a good workout is just killing somebody. And it's really not. It's being able to push that person to a point they can recover from. But in regards to people coming in, the guys, they're always going to do bench press on Monday. Arms are going to have their whole workout. They're spending, an hour and a half on their arms. And what I would like to give the audience is something that they can apply very quickly. So if you haven't been doing something and you really want, or you have metabolic, inflexibility, insulin resistance, that's where you can use incomplete rest. So where we're resting maybe 30 seconds in between our sets, we want to be very strategic with that, and we want to use a lot of unilateral movements. So instead of barbell movements where we're doing barbell squats and deadlifts, those are all great lifts, don't get me wrong. And there's ways that we can make those more joint friendly with a lot of the bars and the tools, but I call them toys. I'm like a fat kid in a candy shop when it comes to all my toys.
You have
equipment
a lot of fun
and
equipment.
Everything.
Yep.
But it's the unilateral stuff that's going to allow us to improve mobility. We're going to get in those deep ranges, and we're just going to feel better. And if you feel better, you move more. It's natural. You don't think about having to make yourself. It's only when you don't feel good is it a challenge to do more and move more and be more active. It just comes natural. It's like a snowball effect. So we promote getting, the big thing I tell my trainers is I want, when a new client comes in the door, when they walk out the front door for the first month, I don't want them to be crawling out the front door. I want them to say, I feel better than when I walked in. Mm-hmm. Because you give them confidence, and if they have confidence, when we use our unilateral exercises, so split squats, any of the movements you would do with two arms, just do it independently. Do a right arm set, and then go to your left arm and do it. Start with the weak side, so it gets, whatever you do first is going to develop the most. So it's picking those exercises that's going to set you up for the barbell squats and the deadlifts. And if you're short on time, like I know a lot of our listeners, they have a lot going on. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be in the gym like me when I was in my 20s with their bodybuilding and stuff.
Right.
We want to be very optimal efficient, and I think you want to pick more compoundish movements. So we're doing split squats, we're doing pull downs, we're doing like a chest press or push-ups. We're doing some type of row and some type of posterior chain. It could be a leg curl. It could be some type of hinge or a RDL or something, and we can break this down, but those compound movements are going to elicit the most muscle damage. We're going to use more muscles by doing a single lift, so we save on time. And a lot of people, for the first month or two, we won't even train arms. Specifically, we won't do any bicep curls or any press downs because they're short on time, and you're going to get more results out of those bigger movements that are going to work multiple muscles at the same time. And anytime you do a press, anytime you do a pull down, you're working your biceps and triceps anyway. So our clients usually don't come to us anymore for the biggest arms. They want to feel their best. They want to be able to perform on the outside in their business. They want to show up for their family with the most energy. They want to be able to move into their 60s, 70s, and 80s like they do in their 40s. So it's all about creating special exercises that make them feel good, improve mobility. And then the strength of the muscle will come versus starting in lifts they have no business doing because they don't have proper mobility, ankle dorsiflexion, different things like that to allow them to even get what they need to out of those exercises.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this concept of functional movements and functional working out. I mean, I can remember a number of guys who've walked in my office as patients. And at first glance, I look at them, they're jacked like you. They can't tie their shoe.
Right.
And I check their lab work and they're pre-diabetic. So yeah, they look great when they throw on their Speedo bikini and they're, drinking their beers at
Which
the
you
beach.
Probably shouldn't do that anyway.
Yeah, no.
If that's your goal, we need to talk about goal setting.
Absolutely. But, you look at them and they're not functionally strong. I mean, they're in fact very weak. They don't have balance. They can't do certain movements. And we've got to think about that idea that you brought up earlier is sort of working backwards. Let's deconstruct, like, what do you want to be doing in your 70s and 80s? And if you are just working on your beach muscles, you're going to have a lot of trouble moving around when you're in your 80s and you can't balance on one leg or you can't get up off the floor and you got all this mass you got to move.
And you won't look good in the Speedo at that point either.
No, that time you definitely won't. So, well, Jeremy, this is awesome. I would love to, if it's all right with you, for our listeners, just kind of do a brief overview of of what we learned today. Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Just the tip.
All right, so I'm doing Kat segment here, team. So I did take some notes, Kat, if you're watching. So this how it's done. So what are the top 5 mistakes you're making in the gym? So number 1, you don't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, you can't track things. And you don't have that person looking to say, hey, what goal are we trying to reach? And so let's develop something that leads us towards that goal. So, and I definitely suffer from that myself. Number 2, poor form. It is so key to move with tempo, to move slowly. We don't want to get injured here. It's not about moving something from A to B, as Jeremy said. It is about building muscle and building strength. That's the real goal here. So who cares how many times you can move that weight up and down if you're not doing it correctly? Number 3, doing what's comfortable. Again, stress is going to make you stronger. And when you don't work out with a trainer, you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. We got to get a little uncomfortable, folks, to really get these results. Number 4, ignoring progressive overload. So this concept of we're adapting every week, whether it's increasing our reps, changing our tempo with pauses, whether it's putting small amount of weights. It's not jumping up 15 pounds each week. It might be 2.5 pounds, like Jeremy said. And then lastly, you got to do movements that are functional. Stop working out for the mirror and for the gym and for your bros. Like, trust us, you don't look that good anyway when your legs are like twigs. We all want to be functionally strong. We want to move our bodies as we get older. So making sure we're doing unilateral movements, full body movements, and it's a big variety where we're hitting the entire body, not just sitting there pumping out 1,000 bicep curls like Ron Burgundy. So, Jeremy, does that sound a good overview of things?
That sounds pretty good.
Awesome, man. You up for rolling back for one last episode here?
Let's go.
All right, awesome. Well, Stream Team, hope you're enjoying these episodes in this format. I know you're missing Catherine. She's certainly easier on the eyes than Jeremy and I are. So she will be back, don't you worry. But in the meantime, please subscribe. Check out some of our past episodes, including part 1 of this 3-part series on strength training with Jeremy Hughes of Paragon Fitness. So until next time, show yourself a little bit more love and grace. We're all works in progress, and these are opportunities to grow. Thanks, and have an awesome day.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Balls Deep. If you'd like to join our stream team of listeners, please click the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. For more information about our practice, Pizzona MD, please visit pizzonamd.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice. The show does not constitute the practice of medicine. No doctor-patient relationship is formed through this podcast or any of the social media channels related to this show. The use of this information is at the user's own risk. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.